And welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast. I'm John Borton. We got a fun one for you here tonight. You know the guy up in the upper right corner. That would be Tom Crawford. You can catch him on Press Pass with Jack Ebling and such foils as Rico Beard, etc. on Sunday nights. Well, we might mention Rico later in the podcast.
Yeah, do that.
But and Tom with his Crawford Podcasting Network does great work there. We've got a special guest tonight, lower right. That would be one Mr. Barry Gallagher, author of this book, The Greatest Football Story Ever Told, Michigan, Ohio State, 1897 through 2022.
Wow.
And so we're going to be talking about that tonight, but we're also going to be talking about a lot of Michigan football and Michigan, Ohio State. So it'll all kind of meld together. Great to have you guys with us.
Well, looks like a great stocking stuffer or under the tree there, Barry. I gotta ask for that one from Santa Claus. That looks like a heck of a gift there, Barry.
Well, you'll need a big stocking because it's 7 by 10, 400 pages. So it's got to be a stocking on steroids. But
yeah, under the tree. Yeah, under the
tree. Yeah. Well, Tom could come up with one of those. I am positive of that. All right, we will be talking all about the book, and I'm fascinated by it as well. I want to start this podcast with a few Michigan football warm-up questions, and the first that everybody's talking about, Michigan TCU. Can Michigan get past that game to get to the big one, to the championship game? And I'm going to start with Barry because he's our guest that isn't almost a co-host here as Tom Crawford is. We get to see each other every week. Barry, as you look at this game and as you've looked at this Michigan team this year, your thoughts about their ability to compete with TCU, obviously a team that can score itself, but maybe a little more deficient on the defensive side of the ball. Your thoughts about this game coming up?
Well, I agree with that assessment exactly. And as I was listening to the last couple of weeks on your podcast, with Thomas weighing in on some things, you guys already talked about a lot of that stuff. And I think you're right on. I think TCU is an excellent team, well coached. Their strength is offense. Defense, you're gonna score some points on these guys, and if we can do what we did to Ohio State, like you guys also talked about the last couple of years, where you slow down their offense, make them kick field goals instead of get touchdowns, Michigan, I'm confident they can win by double digits.
Okay,
I'm very confident.
Whoa,
very good, Tom Crawford. As we get closer to this one, does your confidence grow?
First of all, I'm a worry wart. You know that, JB and Barry. Now you'll learn that before this podcast is over. But I like some great points made. But I like Michigan running the football against TCU. I think that is a workable proposition in this game, which will control the clock. But my worries and the worry factor here, Max Duggan, that dude, a Heisman Trophy finalist, tougher than nails. And they got this big receiver named Quentin Johnson, who's a tall receiver, very efficient. He had almost 140 yards of receiving yardage against Kansas State. He's the guy that Michigan receiving corps or secondary corps has had trouble with. Remember I talked about the 50-50 balls. This guy can catch them wide open. He can catch 50-50 balls. He's long. And that's the worry part of, can Michigan secondary step up and make the necessary plays? And if they can, without giving up, big chunk plays, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape.
Okay. Well, here's what I like about Michigan as you approach this game. Obviously, you don't have back the biggest piece of the puzzle because Blake Corum is not going to be back for that game. We've all talked about that. We know that. But there are other pieces that are either possibly coming back or growing in confidence and gaining. I think of Will Johnson. You've seen him in that Purdue game, how he took such a huge leap forward. And he's got to come into this this playoff brimming with confidence. You haven't seen Mike Morris, one of the key factors in that defense. You could see him in this game. He's had more time to heal. And a guy like Donovan Edwards, he played those last couple of games with a cast on his hand. Will he be – I would think at the very least he would have some downsized protection for that hand. And he's been effective even running with it. I just think that this time is going to really help Michigan. And I know that certainly TCU will have guys in similar shape. But to get Michigan closer to the team that was, has gone 13-0, I just think is a big deal for them. Go ahead, Tom. Did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to dovetail off that, John, because I think you mentioned some key guys coming out. I tell you what, the defense, Mike Morris, I hope he's healthy. I kid you not. And I really haven't got a clear image of if he is going to be healthy. I mean, he didn't dress in the Big Ten championship game. And then you remember Junior Colson went out of that game at middle linebacker at the Mike.
Right.
I think Jimmy Rolder was in there quite a bit. Number 30 is the number that you're seeing out there more. And he's a true freshman. And so, and I think the kid's doing a really nice job, but it's that linebacker level all season long that has concerned me. So even in an aerial game like that, you're going to get shallow crossers. And so that's the part. Mike Morris's health and then how the second level, i.e. the linebackers, the Mike linebackers, the Will linebackers, how they perform, I think is going to be critical, slowing down this TCU offense.
All right. While you're still in the big box, I want to throw this one at you, Tom. Have your thoughts changed at all on who, if Michigan does advance, you want to see in that championship game?
That's such a loaded question.
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm telling you what, guys, I go both ways on. I mean, it's like, would it be nice to have Ohio State knock off the Georgia Bulldogs, do Michigan's dirty work, the defending national champion, take them out of the picture? Because Michigan knows it can beat Ohio State. But still, I mean, I'm a realist too. It's hard to beat, a rival. I mean, there was a 2-hour episode of the Big Ten Network last night about Michigan, Ohio State. And Barry's written a book about this thing. I mean, it's like there's going to be a lot of angst and anger coming from that Ohio State side in that game. That concerns me on a payback basis. I'd rather play Georgia, to be honest with you, because then Michigan has, and I'm being totally candid here, then they have the payback card they can play. And I think this is a more doable win beating Georgia this year versus last year. They have those outstanding tight ends. They got a Heisman Trophy finalist quarterback, just like seemingly everybody else, except Michigan. But, I mean, I really think that I'd rather play Georgia, and I like Michigan's chances against Georgia as much, if not better, than against Ohio State.
All right, very good. Barry, you're up on this one. We put you in charge, and we say, okay, you can name your opponent in the championship game if Michigan gets there. Who would you prefer to see?
I think Georgia. I want to see them get a chance to get another shot at Georgia. We're a little more up again, and you guys know that Georgia's a little down, but they're still not – they haven't lost a lot, but some of the defensive guys they lost were incredible last year, and they really made things hard for Cade. This year, we got JJ. He's going to present a different dynamic, and it's going to be – I think it's going to be a heck of a game, but I like Michigan's chances, and I definitely want Georgia. Ohio State, I hope they get blown out in the dome, and they got all year to ruminate about it, and then guess what? Then they get to come back to Ann Arbor next year for revenge. Good luck, boys.
Well, there you go. And I'll tell you what, I'm on the Georgia train as well. And it's kind of like what Barry was hinting at after late in that answer. I just don't think that Ohio State deserves to be in the championship game, even if it deserves to be in the playoff. It had a chance on its home field in its last game to at least play Michigan to a last possession type of game, and it got beat by 3 touchdowns. It was clearly kicked around at the end by a Michigan team that was coming in with a lot of people expecting it not to be able to win that game, where Ohio State had so much motivation and the Heisman finalist quarterback and the loaded offense with NFL players and all that kind of thing. So I'm still squarely in the, Bulldogs, go ahead and get it done. And then we'll see that rematch and see what Michigan can do.
But do you think that's going to happen? I mean, that's the bigger question for me. Is I'm trying to visualize what's going to happen in this game on New Year's Eve, as I typically stay home for New Year's Eve and as the last 30 years of my life, and it's like that's what I'm going to be doing. And I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to see. And part of me thinks they're going to get, Georgia's just going to roll them. But then, Ohio State's got so much talent, the wide receiving core, and they got, I see that part. And then I see, it's going to be in Atlanta near Athens. Georgia fans will just pack the place. But you know what Ohio State fans do? They travel well. They'll be represented. So I guess I want to know from you guys. I'm going to steal the steering wheel here. What do you think is going to happen? I think Georgia's going to win, but I don't see a blowout. What do you think, David?
I could see if Georgia gets it going early, that this one could get a little bit out of hand later on, like the Michigan game did, because you say that Ohio State's been given new life and motivation, and absolutely Ryan Day will sell that. This is a whole new season. We've given second life and all that. Okay, but you've got a quarterback that was ready to walk. He was not going to play in a bowl game. So all of a sudden he does this shift. So he's incredibly motivated. Do all these players suddenly shake off that Michigan game that easily? And all right, we're ready to go. Let's do it. I wonder about that. And I wonder about the fan representation. I mentioned this before, but okay, Ohio State does travel well. Does it travel well after getting its tail kicked by Michigan at home in the final game? Barry, your thoughts?
Good point.
Well, I totally agree with that. And again, it's a home game for Georgia, and that place is going to be rocking. Those people down there, I've been to games in Georgia. I saw Georgia Tech play Southern Cal a number of years ago, and there's some big-time football fans there. And this is going to be a very unfriendly crowd. The Buckeye fans will get some tickets, and they'll show up. But it's going to be a Georgia crowd, and Georgia, I think, will take advantage of that. And like you said, if Georgia gets off to a good start and starts affecting Ohio State's game plan and getting into Stroud's head a little bit, it could get ugly. And the fans are leaving, early in Columbus. If they're getting blown out, man, they're on 75 heading north, man. They're out of here. They're not going to hang around and get abused anymore.
It's just up the road. It's not very far.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I heard a phone ringing. That was Ryan Day, and we're not accepting the call. So I will just let him know right now. Sorry, Ryan. You want to call later? Go ahead. We have touched on the last game of the regular season, Michigan, Ohio State. And what I want to know from Barry first on this one, because of your being steeped in Michigan history and Michigan, Ohio State history in this book that we're about to talk about, where does this rank? Where does that win, the 2022 Michigan, Ohio State game, ranked for Barry Gallagher in terms of Michigan efforts in Columbus in particular, but also just Michigan, Ohio State games, period?
Well, I think we all know that one of the greatest wins that ever in the history of the rivalry was number 517 when Bo beat Woody in 1969.
No doubt.
But that was in Ann Arbor. So I did some checking. And if you look back, the biggest win we've ever had in Ohio State is 1946. We beat the Buckeyes 58-6. Mm-hmm. But we didn't win the Big Ten championship that year. I think Minnesota won it. So that there wasn't that much on the line. Bragging rights, all that stuff. We finished second. I think they finished third. The next biggest win was one of the great days in Michigan football history when Tom Harmon, number 98, goes down there in 1940, and they put a 40-0 whooping on them. And for the first and only time in the series history, Ohio State fans give Tom Harmon a standing ovation as he leaves the field. Okay, that will never happen again. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Never going to happen. Never going to happen.
I will say this. They stood at the end this year, but they didn't say a word.
That's
they,
right.
They stood in stunned silence.
Yes.
Zip it. That was zip it, man. There was nothing to say. And so many people left. And like Tom was talking about, I think last week's show, so many people from Michigan, they had the rotten seats. They were down in the good seats at the end of the game because all the Buckeye fans were gone.
Yeah,
no
doubt.
1904, we won 31-6. So that's a 25-point win. Mm-hmm. And then, so this is tied for fourth as the all-time biggest point difference in Ohio. Bo shut them out 22-0. What a marvelous game that was.
76,
and that started Bo's 3-game winning streak at the end of the series, so that he was able to finish, with a winning record against the Buckeyes and a winning record against Woody. But I think 45-23 in a game where everybody thought the Buckeyes would score 40-something. Yeah. And we would have to score maybe 50 to win it, which wasn't unrealistic because the offense, when they're rolling, they can do some things. But we saw some things that we hadn't seen all year with Donovan Edwards. And I got to tell you, I don't know if you guys figured this out. Donovan Edwards is now the record holder for the most rushing yards in a series game in Ohio. He ran for 216 yards. He broke the record by Mr. Jamie Morris.
Jamie Morris, yes,
1986,
sir.
Jamie had 210.
Wow.
So that was something that really caught my eye. It was a great game. And so I think that this one is the greatest road victory in Michigan, Ohio State history. And I just don't know if it's right up there with the number 517. And that was number 888, by the way. So we're getting close to that magic number that nobody else is even close to. And it was, I think, the greatest road win in rivalry history, and one that Michigan fans are going to relish for a long, long time.
And that is the perfect segue to talking about, once again, this book, that the greatest football story ever told, Michigan, Ohio State, 1897 to 2022. And Barry, just talk a little bit about how this project came to be. I've gone through this. You've got a summary of every one of those football games between Michigan and Ohio State that was played in this book. If you want to be able to rattle off Michigan, Ohio State like Barry Gallagher, you'll want a copy of this. But talk about how this, as Bob Ufer would have said, this labor of love came about.
Well, that is the exact word, John, labor of love, because the first, up till 2000, it was pretty easy to write because Michigan still had a 15-game, difference in wins and losses and stuff. And, they had huge advantage. And then the Tressel years and the Urban Meyer years, that was, from 2000 to 2019 it took me like a month to write that. I just had to get in the right mindset, and it wasn't easy. The rest of it was fairly easy. The research was fun. John, you wouldn't believe this, but I use this book of yours a lot.
There you go.
Look at this thing. It's dog-eared. It's got stuff in it. It's just the green tags are for Sparty, and the yellow ones are just like football first. The red ones is Ohio State stuff. This book gets me going in a lot of ways. So I love this book, but we'll talk about that some other time.
Thank you.
So I just, I did the Michigan State book, And that was fun because my boys, I have 2 Spartan sons. Then I have 2 of the favorite Wolverines, and my daughter, she just wants us all to get along. But my wife is a Sparty. And so I had to do this. I had to do this right. And when I did it, most people that read it, they said, Barry, I liked your book, and I got to tell you, I'm a Spartan fan, so I really enjoyed the Spartan wins, and I didn't spend a lot of time reading about the Michigan victories. And I said, I get it. That's perfect. That's the way I wrote it, because there's enough in there for people to be happy about both sides of the rivalry. And with the Michigan Ohio State book, I was fascinated by what I learned about Michigan and Michigan State. And I just knew I didn't want to learn as much as I learned about Ohio State, but I had to learn some things to tell the story correctly and accurately. And that's why I called it the greatest football story ever told, because, you've got great rivalries all over the country, but for longevity, we're one of the top 10 or 15 for, the top 2 winningest teams. Who would have thought that in 1897, when they played for the first time, that 118 years later, or 118 games later, they would be the 2 winningest teams in the history of college football.
Yeah.
Those 2 right there, 1-2. And the reason that is, I think, is because once Ohio State quit playing all their little softies in the 1890s and early 1900s, all they're doing was playing 2 teams from Kentucky State and University of Kentucky, and they were playing all the little Oberlins and, Wittenbergs and all this other stuff. They weren't really playing anybody in football. Michigan, by the way, they were going after Harvard and Yale when they were having trouble finding games in the area. They were sticking their neck out there, and they were trying to find out what it took to be really good. And so they built on that. And then once Ohio State decided they wanted to be pretty good, they absolutely knew that the road to football excellence would have to travel through Ann Arbor, and they would have to become more like Michigan and less like the Ohio State regional team that they were at that time, the state team, really. So I got after it. I used the same format, like you said. I start off every chapter with some background about the era, maybe some changes in the game. And so you can kind of track how the game grew over the years. And then we talked about the actual game. Then I talk about a series update, and I let you know who's up. And Michigan's been up for the entire series. It's never been tied. And now we're up 60-51-6. Of course, Buckeye fans they don't like it that one win was taken away. But, Tressel cheated. I'm sorry. And that's the way it goes. So, officially that game, even though they won in 2010, that game was taken away, and it should have been. So it's complete. And I waited. I had some issues down the road. My book cover guy, his father died, and we were making some changes to the book cover. And then my guy, the official, Bill Lemonnier, who wrote a foreword for the Michigan State book, he did 6 Michigan Ohio State games, and he is so fun to talk to. Man, I told him he's got to write a book. I told him, Bill, you got to write Zebra Tales, and just go for it. If you go into his basement, he has pictures of zebras all over the place that have been given to him over the years from people. He's a zebra. He loves it. But it's just what it needs to be. And
well, and for those that don't know, Bill Lemonnier, the longtime Big Ten official that was very, very familiar to Michigan fans. Before we move on, I just want to give you an opportunity. Well, I'll say this first. You have a fair amount in common with Mr. Tom Crawford in that you're both steeped in Michigan history, and you both, with East Lansing resident Tom Crawford, have that mixture in family of Wolverine and Spartan, and understand the delicate balance of everybody getting along, but understanding your personal priorities.
Can I interject though on one
Please
Michigan
do.
Ohio State game that no one's addressed so far in our podcast, and I know that it stung the most, and that's 1996. Michigan went down as a heavy underdog to Ohio State, That's the Ty Streets touchdown, the slant from Brian Greasy. Dreisbach got hurt. And Ohio State was in position to win a national championship, okay? They were number 2 in the nation. Michigan had just got thumped at home by Penn State. Remember the block punt, John? And they went down and they beat Ohio State 13-9. And the reason I wanted to cite that game, guys, is because I was in the stands, and I never saw so much pain and anguish in that crowd. And then driving home, hearing the call-ins on the local, Tim May was on the show and some other people hosting a show, former players, the pain in their voices was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And doing it on the road, I was at the 69 game. I was at all these games, okay? But that one hurt Ohio State so bad. That's the sweetest because the expectations were nil going into that game. John, you were at that game. You know what I'm saying.
I was not only at that game, I was on the field at the end of that game.
Yes.
And I think I don't know if I've mentioned this on the air or not, but I felt a big thump as Michigan was running out the clock, and something hit me in the back of the right calf, and I looked down at the turf, and it was an Ohio State seat cushion that had been hurled from the stands. And I always wished I kind of just taken it and tucked it into my bag as a sort of a souvenir from that game. But the folks were not happy that day.
Right, and Marcus Wright had the pick, and he wanted to run all the way to the end zone and do OHIO. And remember, Chris Howard. Remember those third down conversions? They ran the ball. Lloyd wanted to run the football to get, and they ran the clock down to virtually nothing. That was a sweet one. No championship on the line, but it set up 97 when Michigan won the national.
There you go. Well, I want to give Barry one more chance to plug the book and tell people, first of all, how they can get a hold of your book, The Greatest Football Story Ever Told.
Well, the easiest way right now, because of those issues, we had some production issues and we had to delay the publication of the book. And I did get a Kindle version out that was during the week of Ohio State Michigan week. And then I waited, and actually, like you, John, after the game, I was writing away, man. And we got it out. So it's current through this year's game. Mm-hmm. And, we got everything done. So it's as current as any book about the rivalry is. There's one goes way back to 1987, Bill Cromartie. Have you ever heard of him, Tom? Bill Cromartie?
Yeah, sounds real familiar. Why do I know that name?
Well, he wrote a book called The Big One. And it went from 1897, and the last game was 1987. So that's one of the things I did before I started writing the book. I thought, well, what's current? What do we have out there?
Yes.
And that was the most current book. And then the guys from Ann Arbor that do the picture books, the guy that used to be a security guy, and he does a nice job. He did Minnesota, Michigan. He just has a lot of pictures, but not a lot of text. He did one on Michigan, Ohio State, and that was a good one too. But that was 2015. So I figured it was time for an update. And so now the book is available and it's coming fast. If you order the book on Amazon, you'll get it in 2 to 3 days max. And I bought some that way to give to some friends. And I can also get author copies. But guess what? My first author copy shipment isn't coming until January 2nd.
Okay.
This is crazy. So they want you to get right off the site and get them. And Scott Hills at the MDen has been so patient, and he's got a big order coming, but I won't have that until January 2nd. Then I got to get it to him. I'm thinking I might drive it, or we'll ship it, a one-day FedEx or something, just to get it there, because he said that people are really asking about it and they want to see what's up. So that's how it's going to be.
All right. Very, very good. Be patient if you want to go to the MDen and get it, but there are other ways, as Barry mentioned. Check that out. I know about the big one because I used that for reference for many years, and now you've got an updated version of the Ohio State Michigan series and rivalry. And Barry, we thank you for letting us know about that. We're going to do some quick lightning rounds as we get down in the last 10 minutes or so of the podcast. I just want to ask you both, and Tom, we'll start with you on this one. Is the Michigan-Ohio State series back on even footing in your mind? I know Ohio State wants to think of these last 2 years as an aberration, or has Michigan positioned itself to get on a little run here, throw things back the other way?
Yeah. I think here's my thoughts on this. 1 year, it was 1 year aberration. All of a sudden, you got you got a you got validation this year. Okay, jubilation last year, validation this year. I think to get the one in Ann Arbor next year, if Michigan pulls that one off, then all of a sudden all bets are off. This Ohio State domination in Y2K kind of goes away a little bit. And the other thing, the impact of these two games, Michigan has beaten Ohio State to win a Big Ten title, to go to Indy to win that Big Ten title and go to the CFP. And so, I talked about that 96 upset. That was cool and everything. But to actually use it as a pathway to get to the CFP is extra special. And it takes that rivalry and balances it out a little bit more, because we're talking about Michigan beating Ohio State over and over and over. And as it happened. And so, next year, though, to answer your question, if Michigan grabs that one next year, I think they're going to. Then all of a sudden, all that Ohio State leverage goes away quite a bit.
All right, Barry, your thoughts on this question? Back to even footing, or where are we?
Well, I think we're in a better place. Harbaugh still is 2-5 against the Buckeyes, and a lot of fans won't let him forget that. But I always think about when James Joseph Harbaugh got to Ann Arbor, we had to suffer through what I call the Adidas years, 2007 to 2015. And that was, we had one win. We had
11, 2011.
We had three wins in 20 years.
Yeah.
So we were way, way, way back. We were getting killed in recruiting. We were missing bowl games. If you miss a bowl game, you know what happens. It affects your recruiting, it affects your extra practices, your player development, all that stuff just goes in the wrong direction. So when Harbaugh came in, he had a pretty good sized mountain to climb. And everybody thought, he'd get it fixed, no problem. And, 1 or 2 years of Harbaugh, he'll take us to the promised land. And it is so competitive. And Ohio State had such an advantage with their recruiting and the winning streaks and all this stuff that it was tough. And it was tough with, competing with some of the other teams that we were trying to compete with. D'Antonio was making life miserable for the, Wolverines, and Wisconsin was playing well. We were having trouble with more than just Ohio State. And that was a huge effort. So now, way better place. The culture, even though I agree with the Eric All thing, I have no idea what's going on with that kid. But, from a military standpoint, leadership, you want leaders who are going to be solid for you, and they're going to stand for the organization and stand for the team. I don't know what happened to that young man, but he's like you said, John, he sound pretty bitter, and that's unfortunate. But, if you don't, Cade didn't sound bitter, but he was disappointed because, hey, Harbaugh's been telling him ever since he got there that this is a meritocracy, and the best of the best are going to represent us on the field, and that's how it's going to be. And if you're not comfortable with that, then, the portal.
But he was not comfortable with that coming out of camp, Barry. I mean, and this is why I got upset with not upset with him, but it really jarred my attention that he said he's, at Big Ten Media Days, and then leading up to, it was his job. He's earned a job. So, I mean, I didn't like that. Went over like a lead balloon with me. Yeah. I mean, you got to earn your position in practice every freaking day, especially those Tuesday and Wednesday practices. Yeah. And I didn't like that attitude.
I hear you. I will just say this as not even a counterpoint, but a mild. I just, when I think of Cade McNamara, even now, I'm hearing him speak out of a place of deep hurt as a young man who is still growing and maturing. And, I don't like some of the things that I'm hearing, but at the same time, I am going to try to think of Cade McNamara as the guy that really helped lead Michigan out of the wilderness and into that breakthrough win against Ohio State. But I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with it, but that's still kind of where I'm at there. Barry, you mentioned recruiting, how that fell off for a while. So much the NIL has become massive in recruiting. Michigan has said we're not going to use NIL in recruiting to offer kids up front, okay, if you come here, you're gonna make this amount. And yet we hear that Michigan is reaching a crisis point or a turning point in how it approaches NIL, and that with the advent of Santaono as president, this is a guy that wants to be very competitive in every single area. And oh yes, he cares about Michigan athletics and Michigan football, maybe more than a whole lot of presidents we've seen in recent years. Do you think that that Michigan is going to have to ramp up its game there as far as NIL, and do you think they'll follow through with it? Barry, you start.
Well, I think they will, because the SEC, the teams they want to play for national championships, probably a lot of the time, they're doing crazy stuff with their players. And Ohio State, I doubt that they're sitting by and waiting to see what Michigan's going to do. They're going to take it as far as they can. And I just don't think we want to stay in the catch-up mode. Maybe we get out front of it. Maybe we do some innovative things that are legal, of course. But Michigan, there's so many smart people running around with media-type backgrounds and stuff. I see no reason why they can't be the leaders and the best in NIL. That helps the kids, and it helps college football.
All right, Tom. Then how does Michigan navigate that fine line between its stated stance so far? We're not going to use it to recruit.
I was sitting at a table at Big Ten Media Days lunch. Jake Butt was at the table where he made that statement many times over Big Ten Media Days, called Michigan's got to adapt or die when it comes to NIL. And that's just the God's awful truth. I mean, they're going to have to ramp things up, or else they're going to be, it's like Jake Butt said, they're going to be the guy saying, the old man saying, get off my lawn. You can't go, Neanderthal man on this thing. You have to be progressive. And we're seeing, look at recruiting right now. Michigan is they're coming up a second Big Ten championship. Yeah, they've done well in the last couple of weeks. You got to manage the portal, recruiting. I mean, Harbaugh's in Chicago today and all this stuff, and that's great. But they should be in the top 5. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. I mean, you look at everybody else up there. Notre Dame's up there, and you're going to have to, as Jake Butt said, you got to adapt. I would get as aggressive as possible on this deal, or else you're just going to be on the outside looking in. And I know it's a conservative thing, and I know I agree. You don't go out and say, you don't entice some kid maybe with a sweet NIL deal that Dante Moore's getting victimized, or Oregon got victimized by the other Pac-12 teams, and he's going, his head's going in circles. I mean, it's crazy. But let the NCAA set the criteria, set the protocols on that, but do what everybody else is doing, or else you're going to get burned. All
right. Well, that's the sort of answer that we would expect out of Tom Crawford, who doesn't hold back his opinions in the slightest. Let's finish with this one, because you talk about an upbeat note for a former Wolverine. Aiden Hutchinson is absolutely tearing it up in the NFL. And that has led to some pointing out and some digging up some sound clips from earlier in the season of a couple of guys that Tom, very well. One, Mike Valente, and another Rico Beard, talking about how Aiden Hutchinson looks weak and looks out of place, and he's probably not going to make it, and those sorts of things. Aiden Hutchinson is letting his play do the talking for him now. Tom Crawford, your thoughts about how you talked about the need to adapt, how he has adapted in a big way to the next level.
Yeah, I remember though, they're calling them Gator arms, and all this stuff. And that's just, with Mike and Rico, that's just hating on Michigan. That's kind of how they're wired. That's their DNA. You take it with a grain of salt. There were, he got slow out of the game, but there was a position change with Aiden Hutchinson. He went from always being in a 3-point stance down to a 2-point stance. He was having pass coverage responsibilities. He got an interception. That against the Packers, it was huge, against Aaron Rodgers, no less. And he's blossoming, and he's doing it with enthusiasm unknown to mankind, like his coach taught him to do in college. And he's going to be the NFL Rookie of the Year. But I think the position change, and then the Lions had a coaching change in the secondary. That guy got fired. There's been some changes and some philosophical changes on that defense. They're much better now. The offense is potent as heck. And I'm a Lions fan, man. Let's go Lions. I mean, I'm so Michigan oriented, but I'm looking for that Jets game. Aiden Hutchinson is going to get some more sacks on Sunday at 1:00.
Well, there you go. I promised Chris Hutchinson, Aiden's dad, whom I covered, after I told him, look, your kid makes me feel older than any other Michigan player ever has, because I covered you and then I covered him.
Right.
But I said I am going to give the Lions another shot now, because it's just the right thing to do. Barry, I'm going to give you the last word on this. You're steeped in Michigan history. You know about Chris Hutchinson's time at Michigan, and now Aiden's. Your thoughts on him and his very successful transition to the NFL?
Well, I think, the key word is transition. He has to do some different things in the Lions system, and the NFL is big boy football. I mean, Big Ten football is big boy football, but this is really big boy football. And he's going up against guys every week that are monsters. And he gets pushed around a little bit, but everybody gets pushed around in that league. But he's playing smart. That interception he made was a very intelligent play. He knew that he wasn't going to get anything, so he just looked at what he could do, and he watched his eyes, and he stretched out that 6'7" frame. He made a great play, and he's just a smart player. He's going to get better with every game, and he's going to be wreaking havoc in the NFL for a while. And he's outspoken enough, and he's charismatic enough to get the guys, especially the young guys that are on that team, and to just kind of lift them up with him. And then the veterans that are going to be with him for a while, they're starting to put together a really, really good core of players that really is hungry, and that they're playing just physical, tough Michigan football. And now they're playing it in Detroit. I love it.
The little swagger from that young man, and it seems to be contagious. So, hey, Barry Gallagher, Tom Crawford, thanks so much for both of you joining us. Once again, check out Barry's book, that greatest football story ever told. And again, thanks for being with us. We will do this, Tom, you and I, again very soon. And Barry, best of luck with the book. And again, appreciate you joining us and all that you bring to it.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Barry. It was fun being on.
It was fun meeting you, Tom, and I really enjoyed watching you the last few weeks. I'll keep watching you guys. Keep up the good stuff.
All right. Thanks.